I think you're going to see a lot of other products coming in the next couple of months. It's part of our roadmap discussions that we have. We are it's very big in terms of where we are going. I think you're going to see a pretty big year in the next 12 to 18 months of. I think it's going to keep us busy, very busy.
Hey everyone, Chris here from AV Magazine, and welcome to another AV Lockdown podcast. And today, a very special guest. We're talking to Ramesh Jayaraman. He's the Vice President and General Manager of Harman Professional in the APAC region. Welcome, Ramesh.
Chris, it's great to be here. So good to see you on the other side, and just so happy to see things in Melbourne have really improved and in Australia. So really good to see that, man.
Yeah, look, I miss our chats. It's always good to drop by your office in Singapore and say hello and see what you're up to. And yeah, may not be doing that for a little while, but thanks for making the time for us.
Absolutely. Our pleasure.
So I'm going to throw you a couple curly ones. So be on your toes. But I'm on your side. I love you.
No, absolutely, man.
So for starters, I'm sorry, I'm going to take you back to the start of the crisis back in February and March. And it was really a time where we saw what our leaders are made of. And I was just thinking in the same way as when you realize your house is on fire and you grab the kids and you grab their family photo album, can you recall, I guess, what your initial visceral response to the crisis was as a business leader?
Yeah, Chris, I think, look, it was interesting, right? I mean, we cater to about 23 countries in the region. So, we kind of started seeing pieces of these towards late January, early February timeframe. Not really expecting that it's going to build up to something like this. So I think it allowed us a bit of time on preparedness. I think in the initial days, there were very varying impacts. I think most of the worries were around supply chain, what's going to happen. This is how it started. So really, if I look at February, March, people were worried about supply chain, supply. Come April, it became a demand issue. Come May, June, it started becoming a cash issue. So reality is, I think we've kind of seen a lot of this happen, and I'm really, really proud that my team, the strength of our partners, the strength of Harman overall, Samsung as a parent company, gave us a lot of stability, gave us a lot of structure in handling these things, going through a pandemic like this. Really, I think, look, for me, interesting part was about holding teams, holding the focus, really basically looking at this as a speed bump. Maybe I've been lucky to go through about 3-4 different ones, nothing at the range of something like this. But I think from a crisis management perspective, what it taught was going back to fundamentals. A was communication. So that basically meant with all our teams, first we had to go look at their safety. And, as we look at teams across the entire region, safety was a big thing. So we worked with HR, government organizations, Harman internally to ensure those safety protocols were very well mapped out. The second really became on calmness, on how we kind of go deal with this. And that was really that, look, we're in a very good space. I think Samsung is a parent company of ours. When we look at Harman, when we look at what Pro was, we could deal with these, I would say, pretty rough roads, but reality was we were able to deal with it well. Second for me, I guess, was around positivity, looking at what is after, not just look at what is within. And a lot of these kind of culminated in very frequent town halls. So I think everyone is very well versed with using the tools, and everyone is kind of on it. And what we did was I, at periods of time, was doing calls every 10 days with the entire region, just to basically be transparent, be very open. And I think those were important things, and I think for us a lot of it was focusing on execution. The good news we had was we were a diversified business, when we looked at the breadth of what we did. And really also basically thinking about how we looked at plans during this space. So I would say a lot of things happened. but realistically, at the end of the day, it was about communication, consistency, being transparent.
For sure. And interestingly, rather than back into your shell, there's been lots of new product coming from Harman Pro this year. And I guess much of that new product, like the roadmap, the pipeline, was planned months prior to COVID arriving. So in some ways, there was little that, the sort of the roadmap was already in place, but how could you respond? What wriggle room was there? What levers could you pull to respond to the crisis from a product, I guess, sort of getting the product into the market, or getting the right product into the market?
Yeah, so look, I think to be very clear, as we looked at it as a management team within Harman Professional Solutions, within Harman, we've been extremely clear. We actually look at this as a road bump, a big road bump through the way. But for us, the focus is on a longer term vision of where we need to go and what we need to go execute on. So our roadmap has not been shortened, has not been pulled back. We've actually been very strong to our R&D spend. We want to basically accelerate that and move towards where we need to go. So as we look at our audio, video, lighting lines, as well as our software platform, we've been very, very focused on developing all of those. Looking at COVID, I think the impact that these were getting built was very helpful in taking it out. And I think, as you can expect, when I look at the industry at a very broad base, we have a retail market, we have an installation systems market, we have a touring performing arts market, a cinema market, just to basically look at the various factions. And we knew that the entertainment market, when I looked at touring performing arts or cinema, would be slow. We expected that to happen, that's a given. And that really meant doubling down efforts on the other two areas, which was part of our strategy, part of our investment. So when you look at retail, we were about 2.5 years ago in other markets, we'd already started with online. And what that really meant was accelerating where we needed to get towards. So good news was already part of our roadmap. And the good news was working with our partners, it was already part of our planning. So it just meant this is going to go on a priority urgent list now, and other things are going to fall down. So look, that's been very helpful in balancing it out for us. The second thing I see is our partners have also been, bullish during this time. So we've actually seen, especially if I look at Australia and New Zealand, J-Pro in New Zealand, Madison AV, CMI, Showtech. We've actually been trying to invest into this marketplace, as we kind of work together to go build things out. Because our viewpoint is, through a course of a pandemic like this, there are impacts to a much wider distribution base and much wider industries. What it is, I think time will tell. But I think our history has constantly told us that, we have to do things differently during this point in time. So that's been a pretty big part of what we've done, and I feel very proud about it in terms of where we are and where we're headed.
It feels like if ever there's a product that was the right product at the right time, that's that product. It's quite amazing. So I guess, credit to Harman for identifying that was, picking winners, I guess, and fast tracking them. That's kind of what you're alluding to.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
And also I believe working with our channel partners to basically create those avenues where we can get in. And also I believe working with our channel partners to basically create those avenues where we can get into, because I think fundamentally some things after the pandemic will change, and I think what we see working with all our partners, Madison AV, Showtech, J-Pro, CMI, is we had to go redefine things, and the speed at which it happened, the amount of collaboration that existed was very, very good. So, when I see a light, I'm so proud of them at this point in time for all the great work that's happened.
There's been some brands in the hum pro space that feels like they haven't had a lot of love for a while, which I guess is why the new AMX DVX presentation switcher was such a big deal coming out this year. I guess there's a large and long-suffering AMX tribe in Australia. What do you have to say to them about the future of AMX?
I think you've had a chance to see the DVX 4K, Chris. I think you're going to see a lot of other products coming in the. I think you've had a chance to see the DVX 4K, Chris. I think you're going to see a lot of other products coming in the next couple of months. It's part of our roadmap discussions that we have. We are. It's very big in terms of where we are going. I think you're going to see a pretty big year. In the next 12 to 18 months I think it's going to keep us busy, very busy, and good busy.
And the great thing about the presentation switcher was that it gave us a little glimpse into the potential future of stablemate brands like BSS, DBX, and Crown. And again, there's enormous amount of love for BSS. I guess there's a bit of anticipation in the market for where Harman might take BSS. So I just thought I'd give you the opportunity to give me a world exclusive scoop on what's going to happen with BSS and any new product.
Yeah, Chris, I think, I can talk more in terms of roadmap at a very high level. Obviously, as things develop, we want to be transparent and open with where we can on an NDA basis. But what I can tell you is we have really accelerated. When you look at the JBL AKG lines, a lot have happened and in the installation system space, but also very much in the retail space, right? So that's been, and the touring performing arts space as well. So we are bullish on these spaces as we look at it. Also in the cinema line, if you see, we've actually come out with the DSI 2.0 amplifier, which is basically going in, it's networked, and it brings in a lot of cool technologies that's needed for that market. As we look at the broader bases, I look at AMX, it is a very critical brand for us. It is something, as you've seen, a slew of products come out. When I look at next year, if I tell you the roadmap, it's not a white page with a few dots. It's a roadmap with a white page with a lot of dots that we have as we basically anticipate things coming out going into next year. Clearly there are security clearances, other stuff as they basically get into different environments. So we are pretty bullish on what's going to come out there. I would say it's going to be a good year. And I think that's the same thing you'll see with our software platform, you're going to see with BSS. But as we build this, it's an entire ecosystem we have to build. So our thinking really is a 3-year roadmap process. But a lot of that execution is beginning to come out now. And in some cases, we actually made decisions not to take out the product because it's not the right timing for some of these markets. So that's going to get accelerated as we bring them out.
Gotcha. There's been some real winners and some real losers in the out of the COVID crisis. I guess, the obvious ones is the touring market is a huge loser, and the home studio and that retail market is a huge winner. But has there, in the same way as that there's been surprises out of COVID, like people hoarding toilet paper, I never saw coming, but has there been any surprises for you about winners and losers out of the COVID crisis from a Harman perspective?
Oh, big time. Look, I think we've got about 15 to 20 products that are just hot at this point in time. If I just pick up let me take an example, AKG Lyra, when it came out, was really looked at a podcaster bundle, and it was meant for the MI space. It's interesting. It's become a very hot online product. The price points are phenomenal. The quality is phenomenal. So really, when you look at COVID, and as I keep telling my teams, COVID is about AV on steroids, right? Because right now, as you and I meet, it is audio and video, and that's how we're basically communicating. And what that means is the tools and the stuff that need to be around have been on steroids. So we've seen lines pick up very strong. Our AKG brand has, really, I would say, double, triple digit growths, in terms of where we are. I think we've seen some very positive momentum. We've also seen on the lighting space, our architectural installation business has really picked up. So it's been longer term, but it has really picked up. When I look at the install space, while the touring space has been slow, the installation space is still active. So we see movement there. Some cases with house of worships, but also people preparing for what the future means. So I think it depends on a mindset of if you look at the pandemic as a huge road bump, or you look at this as a valley where you're going to go crash. And I think we've just taken the way of looking at this as a road bump, and we want to fly over it. So that's the hope.
There's one of the big focuses has obviously been in the home office. So I'm going to maybe put you on the spot here and ask you about your home office. What did you sort of like have to relook at it? Is it's your classic sort of I guess round table chat about dreaming about what the home office is going to look like, what matters to people. What's the fantasy home office look like, and where does Harman fit into it?
So interestingly, Chris, I'll talk from my perspective. Yeah. So first, for me, I have 4 children. So first was for me to go find my own space where I could get my quiet time. So that was the first big part of what I had to go find. And what I realized is I had to go find a storeroom with my bicycle where I could go hide away and not have a spot. But realistically, I think look, it's really built up, right? I think over time. I have monitors. I basically have, a system to have conference calls. I've got AKG Lyra plugged in. Had the ability to kind of have, professional Bluetooth headphones that I could potentially use for, if I wanted to walk around or sit in front of you and talk to you. I had to do both, to kind of get things going. So. I think there has been a massive change, in terms of what the home office has meant, and really for us, from a technology perspective, was important, but also it being seamless between us being at the home and us being in the office, just so we could have these movements. So I think that was very critical. What I also see happening is these technologies, which were I would say were professional grade to get started, have become table stakes today. So the minute I got it, now my son has one. All the others have one, and what it has done is it has become a sort of a style of communication of where things need to go. So I see this to coexist. I don't see one falling down against the other, but I see that coexistence clearly sitting there.
And in your conversations with other business leaders, what's your sense of a snap back to the way we've always done business in large crowded offices? Do you feel that there's a real hunger to get back into the office, even from your own team's perspective, or is there a lingering kind of desire to maintain some of that home office mix?
So look, I think we've learned a few things, right? I've learned a bit about flexibility. Even though Harman and I think all major corporations, we've always spoken about flexible hours and those kind of things. it's really basically brought around the element of flexibility that we realized is very important. So I think that flexibility is going to continue. But that being said, what I see is it is very important. I've also realized the coffee machine chats, having a quick lunch together. Some of these discussions, which I think work from home can result in calendars being filled out from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m., for a person like me. I realized that, you also started giving space because your calendar became that space that anyone could take. And in the last 3 months, I've been with a lot of business leaders and people, my peer sets, people from other industries, just as we meet as friends and we chat. What we really realized, it is important to basically look at all tasks under a lens of urgency versus importance, right? What is important, what is urgent, and how you kind of block off time for your workout, how you block off time for your children, how you do these things have been important. But also at the same point in time, we realized that these coffee machine chats, 5-minute look at someone's face, and especially for a person like me or within Harman APAC, when we deal with 23 countries within the region, a lot of times it is our expression, as how we basically speak and how we body language says a lot. And I think we've really been encouraging for people to come back but still have that flexibility, so they could be in for 4 or 5 hours and basically leave at 2-3 in the afternoon. But keep that ability of flexibility being there, and that's been important. So I see both coexisting.
I guess to the question of Harman Pro as a corporate entity, and I guess your strategy from the moment that you took over the role of being very solutions orientated, and it's clear that it's still a big priority for Harman to push Harman as a sort of a overriding sort of mother hen entity over all of the pro brands. I guess without sort of badgering you in a typically kind of cynical Australian way, so I apologize in advance, but can you explain to me why, or our readers as audiovisual professionals, why we should care about Harman when our interest is always in the brand or the product?
So look, I think we need to go relook at this, right? So reality is, within the region, we've always promoted the iconic brands of Harman under the Harman umbrella. I think there is a fundamental difference, right? So the iconic brands of Harman have their own space and own places. If I go look at JBL where it sits, if I go look at AMX where it sits, they all sit within their respective spaces, and they are iconic brands. We are not going to take away the iconicity of any of these brands. Where Harman really comes in is really about bringing this integrated roadmap to bring all of these pieces together. So I think there's a fundamental difference between how we view this, because reality is those iconic brands are important to us. But the Harman mothership brings across the synergies and how we can basically go deliver to them when we look at the AV over IP industry just across the board.
Are those synergies obvious to the market?
Look, I think in some cases, yes. I think where we have clearly seen with AV over IP proliferation, we've seen those synergies being very important to the marketplace, I think. And that's why I said, I think when you look at the retail MI business, they work in a very brand-centric way because the product is self-sufficient in what it kind of does. When you look at the installation system space, the coexistence and the discussion of how these work together are important. Just like you alluded with AMX DVX 4K, it tying back to BSS, it tying back to the Crown, it tying back to our JBL side is a very important part of the full experience. So I think where Harman really differs from most other people is whether it be loudspeaker technology, whether it be DSP technology, whether it be AV control technology, we kind of understand it all and we can bring it to them, and that basically creates the happy experience. And Australians like happy, so that's good.
And I guess just to touch on that, getting your perspective on the Australian market, I guess through COVID, we've all, as markets around the region, probably been fairly inward looking, just surviving or doing what we can to do business. From your 1,000-foot view, do you have any insight into kind of where Australia fits in the region as far as how it's responding, or where the green shoots are versus other countries?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think, in many ways, countries are similar. Many ways, there's a slight idiosyncrasies of what happens, right? But I think there are commonalities. It's just at different points in time they are happening. When I look at Australia, what we see when we look, and I think we have to look at by the lines of our business, right? So our retail MI business has been more strong than it could have been. Really driven, as we said, by a lot of products coming out, but also with working with CMI and the team, we fundamentally changed our go-to-market of where we need to be. So we're beginning to look at online, we're beginning to look at all these things that truthfully the Australian markets did not consider very heavily pre-pandemic. This wasn't, it was more traditional. But I think the pandemic has clearly forced people to think differently. And I think where it really matters is the speed and the agility by which we go do this. And I think what I'm very proud is that has really happened. When I look at the touring performing arts space, and the entertainment space, I think it is a given, right? I mean, if people can't gather in big volumes and where things are, so Harman understands, people understand, but really what we did was, and that's why we decided to bring out the BRX 300 towards the end of this pandemic, especially with Victoria opening and stuff, because our viewpoint is products like those will still go. As you basically get to events of 40, 50, it typically works in a certain cycle. 5 people can meet, changes to 8, goes to 15, goes towards 50. And what we've learned from a trend perspective is every market is slowly doing this. No one is going towards 2000, but they're going towards 50. And what we are doing is we are taking the products that fit into this cycle and do extremely well. When we look at the installation system space, Madison AV has been I'm just amazed and surprised. I mean, we are hiring people. We are hiring more people. Just last week, we hired 3 more people in the area. So we are in a process of saying, look, this is a road bump, and how we look at this is very critical. I think, coupled with the fact of our very strong roadmap, it's been a great time, Chris, because now we have people's time to actually go meet them. So whether it be government institutions, whether it be universities, whether it be other people. In the past, getting time was tough, but what now it has done is allowed us to have these conversations in a very effective way. So I feel very good. I feel that things are picking up pretty nicely. We're building a strong pipeline, and I think Harman invested in a team there. We've got Madison investing in a team, and I think it's been a very, very good partnership. So I think strength of families are important during this time, and that's what's established, across the board for us.
And finally, to wrap up, what's been your personal COVID story? What have you picked up a new skill? How is your sourdough bread going?
Yeah, mate. So look, I think COVID's taught me a few things, right? I mean, one, I said I have 4 kids. It's got me time to really spend time with them. So every afternoon, I make it a point that about 3 o'clock, I finish work. I take about 2 hours. I usually go pick them up at school, bring them back home, and get some time. It's not something I've ever done. Because I always traveled, and that's been phenomenal, so it's been fantastic for family relationships. The second part I've learned is all people are people. And really, as we look at our teams, I would say we are much more closer together, uh, as COVID progresses than we were even before pre-COVID. I would have said I've always had a good team, but I really feel this has become a great team because now our discussions are more than just work. They've been about family, they've been about children. I take walks with my team, so some of my meetings have now been, we can't meet in person, we can't meet in office environment, but you can walk a distance a meter away from me or 1.5 meters away from me. I can walk, and we usually meet in parks now. So we've kind of like started doing 4 or 5K walks. Look, it's a slow walk, but it's a great avenue for us to have. So I feel very good from a people perspective. The second part I think it's also done is given the ability to connect back to people. That I think, look, it's been good. I would say COVID's given things of teaching me fundamentals. That's been very good.
Cool. Thanks for your time, Ramesh. It's been it's been interesting and a real pleasure to talk to you again.
Absolutely, Chris. Great seeing you, mate. Take care.